All characters and events in this publication, other than those clearly in the public domain, are fictitious, and any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. Copyright 2016 by R.L. Coy. R.L. Coy Books presents The Master of Names by R.L. Coy. Chapter 2. A reading by Jeanette Coy. Chapter 2, Part 4. Adriana appeared through the wheat fields. "By the will of Satan, what are you doing out here? You could have been killed. Don't you know that there are bandits if you venture too far out? I'm glad to see you're all right, though." Finally, taking notice of where she was, she saw the dead bodies strewn around the campsite and fainted. "Well," Drake said, "she took everything rather well, I think." Drake smiled ruefully. "Let's get your mother back home. We may have to leave in a few days for the school. Is it all right if I push the date forward? I see your progress, and I think you are more than ready." Plum shrugged and said, "Sure. I don't really have any friends anyway." Drake looked at Plum for a moment with a sad expression. Then they picked up Adriana and carried her back to the farm. After a while, Drake asked, "Well, what about the other boys in the town?" Plum said, "Well, they've bullied me ever since they found out that I had magical abilities. And even before that, they were never really nice to me. But it's been worse since the census, though." "Oh, I'm sorry, my boy. Unfortunately, that happens when people are either consumed by jealousy or are simply afraid of you," Drake said. When they could see Plum's house in the distance, Drake said, "Well, you can always count on me as a friend." Plum nodded. "Thank you, Drake. I really appreciate that." As they got to the front door, Plum and Drake put Adriana down on the front porch, still unconscious. Plum, finding the front door key, quickly unlocked the door and went inside. Plum and Drake put Adriana to bed. "It's always a fun experience with your mother, Satan bless her," Drake said. "Oh, just one thought, though. Next time your mother faints, you will hold the legs. The stench is terrible." Plum laughed, then said, "You want any dinner? Maybe I can rustle up some soup." "No, thank you, Plum. I think I will cook something in my room tonight," said Drake. "You're welcome to join me." "Oh, no, I think I'll stay with my mum," Plum said. "I'll find out what she prepared for dinner, and I'll see if there's any left over." Drake, picking up the lantern, said, "I have to go and prepare your enrollment papers for the school. Tomorrow I will need your mother to pay the tuition fees. Have a good night, and sleep well." The next morning, Plum was woken by the soft sounds of chirping birds. Hearing Adriana singing in the kitchen, preparing breakfast, Plum got up quickly, donning his usual attire of a white tunic, leather tan trousers and sandals, before entering the kitchen. Seeing Plum, Adriana said, "Breakfast, sport?" Plum sat down yawning and stretching, stiff from the adventures of late last night. Then he looked down at his breakfast and started eating. Adriana, sitting down at the table opposite him, said, "Sorry about that trouble last night, Sport. Drake told me everything. I'm not really used to seeing dead bodies. Drake tells me that they were going to raid the town. It's a good thing you did stop them, otherwise the townfolk and I probably wouldn't be around." Kissing him on the cheek, she said, "Thank you." Plum nodded a reply. Adriana continued fiddling with her locks, and she said, "You are going to be a great hero one day. I know it." After finishing their breakfast, Adriana went back to the money box she had hidden away in her drawer. She got out the sack that Damien had given them and gave it to Plum, taking out only a handful of coins for herself, which she put back in the box. "This is your money now. Go on, go to the old shed and see Drake. He's out there waiting for you so he can send off the enrollment papers for your school. Your future, it's going to be a bright one, my son," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "Now go on, make it happen." And with that, Plum was out the door and heading towards the old shed. When he got to the door, he knocked. A voice from inside said, "Enter." Plum opened the door, and there was Drake sitting on the bed. He looked up and said, "Good, you're here." He made an open palm gesture. "Can you hand me the coin sack, please?" Plum handed Drake the sack. Drake calculated for a minute, took out a handful of coins and put them back in the sack, then handed the sack back to Plum. Plum could feel that there were only about 10 coins in the sack. Disappointed, Plum said, "Did you really have to take so much?" "Tuition fees at the school are expensive, but the great thing is that once you have paid the tuition fee, you don't need to pay anything ever again." Plum felt good that he had paid his fees, and he was going to leave Devane within the next couple of days. Drake put the money in an envelope, sealed it with the royal emblem, then, taking out his wand, began casting a spell. Plum heard soft melodic chanting, which was almost like singing, and watched the envelope grow brighter and brighter. Then, as it finally got dimmer, the envelope slowly disappeared. "There we are, better than the royal post." "What did you do to it?" asked Plum. "Well, I used a sending spell to send it to the school. We should hear back from them in the next couple of days. Then it will be off to the school with you." Plum, scratching his head, said, "What happens when I get my enrollment?" Drake said, smiling, "A letter will appear in your dining room, on the table, generally with a lot of fire and magic smoke. They like to make a huge fuss, these magicians." Drake smiled ruefully. "Of course, sometimes it just appears. You never can be quite sure." Plum, checking to see if he was kidding, gave him a look. Drake, realizing that he'd worried Plum, said, "Oh, I'm joking, of course. It will just appear on your table in the morning." Drake gave him a reassuring thumbs up. I guarantee it. The next couple of days passed, either with Plum sparring with Drake, or Plum helping Adriana to sell grain to the other merchants. One day, after Plum had got back from selling the grain to the merchants, Drake and Adriana were both sitting down at the table. They were eating dinner. Plum could see a letter starting to materialize on the table. The wax seal of the school appearing out of nowhere. Plum held up the letter and observed it. It was made of what looked like old parchment paper. There was a seal on the back showing the emblem of the school, a raven holding a scroll. Drake gave him an impatient look and said, "Well, aren't you going to open it?" Plum, still fixated on the beautiful paper, but breaking out of his trance, said, "Yes, yes." He went to break the seal. As he did this, he could see the raven on the seal quiver and move. And as he began to break it open, the raven flew away. Plum's eyes widened, and Drake interjected, "You see, I told you, these wizards like to make a fuss about everything." Then Plum slowly unfolded the letter and began to read. "You, Plum of Devane, have been chosen in the arcane census to be a part of the School of Black Shadows, to where you are to be escorted by a delegate to the school. Further instructions will be given to you upon your arrival, and you will be assigned a mentor or a tutor. This information will all be given on a need-to-know basis. Kind regards, the Black Shadows Admissions Officer." Drake said, smiling, "At least they didn't make the letter appear in a ball of fire. That would have been a problem. Yes, I'm actually pleased that it came out quite normally this time." "Drake," Adriana said. "So, what happens now?" Drake replied, "Well, now we will have to leave tomorrow. Lots of things need to be done. Lots of preparations." Drake, thinking aloud, continued putting his hood on, and standing up said, "I will go down to the inn, and I will tell the envoy that I need my horse and carriage and the driver for tomorrow. We will leave for the school as soon as it is light." With that, Drake went out the door. Then Adriana said, "Are you sure you want to do this? Are you feeling up to it?" Plum nodded. "I want to make you and Dad proud, and I'll come back when I've finished my training and be the Wizard of Devane." His eyes were filled with determination. Adriana squinted at him, trying to digest his words. "If you had the power of Seinen at your fingertips, and you are creating a world as beautiful as this one, would you destroy it all and start again, my dear boy?" She put her hand on his shoulders. "I love you very much, and I want you to understand that you are not bound here. You are your own man, and you can do what you like." She continued, tears welling up in her eyes. "You're not like the other boys, Plum. that work on the farms, bringing home food for the table and getting wedded to a suitable spouse. You are not meant for that rabbit hole existence, and neither was your father." Her tone became soft and sorrowful. "I want you to have the best in life. The others would get suspicious if you were still here and you were in your 30s, not married, and still looking after your mother. No," she said, her tone becoming firm. "You are more than that, my boy. You are more capable than any of these boys in Devane. Go off. You have the education. See the world and follow in your father's footsteps."